Hi, just a quick follow-up to the previous video where I showed how you can make your own do-it-yourself EMI probe for $10, including the little amplifier. And a lot of people pointed out the irony of making a $10 probe and then using it on like a $1,000 or $1,500 spectrum analyzer to make it work. And yeah, well, fair enough. But a lot of people ask, can you actually use this $10 EMI probe or any EMI probe on a regular oscilloscope, i.e. use the FFT function to turn your oscilloscope into a spectrum analyzer? And yes, you can. So let's take a quick look at that. And also there's other ways to do a cheap spectrum analyzer as well. And I've got on order a one of those USB SDR, software defined radio spectrum analyzers. So I hope to do yet another follow-up video on that. Okay, so what I'll do first is just get a baseline right across the crystal on this Gigatron board here, just so that we can compare it with various scopes. Here we go. I've got a 100 megahertz span, reasonably low frequency. If you're looking at the far field emissions in like a regular EMC compliance test, if you took your product to an EMC test house, then depending on the type of product, a typical frequency range might be from 30 megahertz to 1 gig, but you can definitely get a decent look at things with just like a 100 megahertz span and stuff like that. Depends on the product that you're working with. Let's get that. I'll put that right over the crystal like that, and we can freeze that. So there you go. Let's see if we can get a similar response with a similar peaks and noise floor and whatnot. But really, when you're doing these sort of near field H or E field magnetic or electric field probing, you're not really doing a quantitative measurement as like an absolute quantitative value. You're really looking at the spectrum and just seeing if any peaks actually pop out here. And if something, you know, you move this over your board and you have a look in real time and see if anything just pops out like that. And then you go, aha, you go in there, you measure the frequency, determine what frequency that is, and if that's going to be an issue. That's why it doesn't really matter what size loop you used here, whether or not it's calibrated in quote marks. I mean, the professional probes, yes, I had to dip the end in yellow because I peeled it back. It didn't stick very well, by the way. I'd need a couple of more coats on that. I need to get the liquid dip one instead of the spray one anyway. So although these professional ones might come with characteristic plots like this, it shows you the coupling loss performance over frequency. In this case, it's a 3 gigahertz span here, but really the calibration in quote marks doesn't really matter for these things. You're just looking at a sort of like a relative signal just jumping out of the noise floor basically. Okay, so let's just try a typical scope here. I've got the brand spanking new Keysight 4-channel 1000X series, 200 megahertz analog bandwidth, 4 channels. It's got a reasonably nice FFT function, doesn't have a huge number of points on this thing. What is it, 64k point FFT I think, but it's going to do the business. Now, this isn't the best scope if you're looking at low amplitude signals. It does have a 500 microvolt per division range, but that's not true 500 microvolts per division. It's just software magnified. You might be able to see that in that the pixels are actually doubled. But fortunately, you don't need a like a really good low signal level front end scope, because that's what our amplifier's for. This is a 20 dB amplifier. The cheap $7 one from eBay. This one happens to be 30 dB. You can get 40 dB ones. If you're worried about the noise floor of your scope impacting it, just get a higher gain preamp. That's it. So if you want to get these on eBay, just search for RF preamplifier and there's like dozens of different models. Do is set our probe just 1-to-1 because we haven't got our ×10 probe here, and we'll just set it to like 200 millivolts per division. And I'll put the probe over that crystal again in exactly the same location that we had for the spectrum analyzer, and look at that. Let's go down to 100 millivolts per division. This is not low amplitude stuff. Even with a 20 dB gain amplifier, if you get a higher gain amplifier, it's going to be higher again. But you know, if I put it elsewhere on the board, like directly over the ROM, for example, 200 millivolts per division, some really high level stuff. That's over the RAM. I'll just show you that on the board here. See? That's over the ROM. Address decoder, you can see that signal really changing in real time. It's great. That's what you can do probing. But of course we can't see much in the time domain. So we have to turn on our FFT. We can switch it to the frequency domain exactly like we get over on the spectrum analyzer so we can see the frequency peaks, because that's what we're really interested in. Alright, now we can actually leave the analog signal on if we want, and generally switch that off because it just adds clutter. And if we put it over the crystal like this, then we can start to see some spikes in here. So we use our controls here. Let's have a look at the FFT. We're at 100 megahertz span, so there's 10 divisions on there, so it's 10 megahertz per division. Doesn't actually tell you that down here that's 10 megahertz per division. You just got to use your noggin. And our center frequency is 50 megahertz. We're just using a hand-in window and vertical units in dBs. Doesn't matter. You might have seen me use dB microvolts on the spectrum analyzer. I just prefer to work in that for this sort of thing. It doesn't really matter. We don't really care about absolute values on this near field type measurements, really. It's more of a comparative thing and trying to find peaks in the value here. Anyway, move this up and we can change our scale here. Let's move that up. There we go. And of course we can change our horizontal to get more resolution. You can see the resolution, FFT resolution there, 122 kilohertz. So that would be equivalent to our spectrum analyzer there, which we were using a 120 kilohertz resolution bandwidth filter there. So maybe some averaging or something like that, get it a little bit better. And then we can go in there with our cursors and then we can measure our frequency. Bingo, 6 megahertz, that's our fundamental clock. Of course, 12 megahertz and so on. Now, because it's hard to actually show these two side by side, what I've done is actually screen captured the spectrum analyzer, and in my video editing software here, I can overlay it. That's kind of cool. It's got a similar sort of shape. You can see that the peaks are the same. And if you have a look at like this one here, for example, it's sort of like you can see that that's a lower amplitude to all the others. Some of them are a bit higher, but and stuff like that. This one is correspondingly low, like the spectrum analyzer one. So it's doing the business. And as I said, all you care about is those peaks popping out. As you go over the board, you might compare board PCB revisions, for example. So you might go, aha, like I've got this big spike here, for example, might come out. So you might realize that you goofed up the PCB layout. So you might respin your board, tighten up the loop area to actually get that down or do whatever measure you want to do. And then you retest it and you should be able to then see that particular spike drop by X amount of dBs or whatever. So you don't need a quantitative value, doesn't really matter. To get a comparative difference when you make changes on your design, that's what it's all about. So you can see how even a low-end scope like this with its FFT functionality is more than good enough for the job of doing this. You don't need an expensive spectrum analyzer. You can just make your own probe for like $5, buy another $10 preamplifier, Bob's your uncle. Let's actually add a 50 ohm terminator to that and see what difference that makes. So there you go. It does get a little bit closer perhaps to our response over here, and you can actually see the general trend. So really the averaging is probably the best. Just love the averaging effect. And if I just dial that back to a similar sort of like amplitude, relatively speaking, to what we've got on the two screens here, you can see, yeah, it's doing quite a reasonable job. And if we try a scope with a sort of notoriously poor FFT functionality, the venerable Rigol DS1054Z, which is otherwise still an excellent bang per buck scope, let's see what we can do with that. As you can see, we can actually get that to do the business as well, even though its update rate and its number of FFT points isn't great. But yeah, let's have a closer look. 18.8 kilo dB volts. Shit just got serious. And as you can see there, it kind of works. We're at the same 10 megahertz per division here. You can see some spikes in there, but it's not terrific. But the trick with this is that you'll notice over here, it's got trace. Now, the latest firmware, the original firmware, only did FFT based on the trace data, i.e. the displayed data. But if we actually change that, that's why the resolution isn't that great. But if we change that to memory, There you go. Bingo. That does it on the entire memory. And you'll notice that we get the expanded frequency range now as well. And that's much better, but it is 16K points, but it still does the business. Yes, the updating is slow on this thing, but like, it is still actually usable. It's just not as great. 16K points versus 64K points, there's a big difference, but the information is there. So that's the main thing. One of the annoying things about the Rigol, though, is that you can't turn off channel 1, for example, because then your data just vanishes. So you've got to actually have channel 1 on the screen. And if you go into the math function here and it's like half display, which is the split display, and if you go into the full display, it like so there we go. We can actually get rid of it like that because it's the displayed window moving that out, so it's still actually capturing the data in there. It's possible to do the business with the Rigol. It's just a bit slow and clunky, that's all. Just trying to change the offset in on this is just an exercise in frustration. It'll eventually come good, but hey, there it is. So we can actually go into the cursors here and we can actually change our units to hertz, 6 megahertz, and our 12, etc, etc. It does a reasonable job, but the 16K points isn't great and the slowness of it, but apart from that, you can coax it into working, no problems. Now let's have a look at the Siglent SDS1202X-E. This is a 200 megahertz bandwidth scope, and it gives a pretty darn good account for itself. As I'm in exclusive mode at the moment. I really like the split screen mode, is really nice, super fast updating, of course. The FFT is faster than the Rigol, but not super quick. And I like how you can overlay them on top. It really, like the contrasting colors with the white and the yellow there, really works. Or you can just go exclusive like that. And we can actually improve that because we're normal display at the moment. But if we go in and do some averages, that is pretty jazzy. That's doing the business very nicely. I like that. But there are some scopes that are just absolutely useless. This Owon XDS3202, which actually has a 12 and 14-bit converter in it. So in terms of like resolution, it's actually quite a good scope. But its FFT functionality is absolutely useless. I can't even get it to match the parameters of the other scopes with 10 megahertz per division. It's just you can't do anything with it. And the Rohde Schwarz HMO1200 series, very cute little scope. It's giving an excellent account for itself. Look at this. It's a little bit slow because I've got all the averaging turned on. I've got 131K points here, 128K. Hand in window, and that is a superb result. Look at that. Wow. It does take a little bit more fiddling on this to actually get what you want on the FFT window, but that is beautiful. We can actually lower the points. There's our 65K points, 32K points. Anyway, that's 16K points. That's the same as the Rigol, for example, and we're getting a much better response on the Rohde Schwarz here. Not only is it faster, but look at the noise floor is much better. Those signals are really popping out of that, so I'm loving that. And we'll have a quick look at the GW-Instek GDS-1104B because this thing has 1 meg points FFT. And look, this has to be the fastest updating of all of them. That is insane. Look at that. Unfortunately, it's a bit inflexible in that you can't actually turn off the analog channel, otherwise it actually vanishes. And if you try and change the position of it, if you go up off the screen, it's not just the display, it's actually the ADC window. So you start to see your signal vanish like that. But one of the reasons it's so fast, we are only on 10K points mode. If we memory mode, if we go to 100K points, whoa, look at that. Now we're talking 1 meg points. It takes time for its first, but even at 1 meg points, which is different, this is the sample memory. This is not the FFT number of FFT points. This one actually takes a bit of fiddling around in terms of like selecting the correct thing here, but there we go, we've got it. And you can see the ridiculously fine resolution in there. It's just nuts. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have an FFT averaging function. I've got the channel averaging function turned on. If we go into acquire there, I've got that done, but it doesn't look like it has a separate average for the FFT. But yeah, it's just all kind of like really messy. I'm not too taken by it. Let's have a look what a higher end scope can do. One with not only a true 1 millivolt front end, but also a 10-bit ADC as well. So this is a Rohde Schwarz RTB2004, very nice scope. And look at the ridiculously fast updating on this. I've got the resolution bandwidth. You can just go in there and set that. It's very nice. You can just like type it in and the span, it's beautiful. Anyway, like it is quick. It is superbly fast. Look at that. But you might notice that there's a lot of crap in there. So if you actually go into the waveform, so we've got our hand-in waveform as per normal. That's our spectrum. We can actually go in there. Even though I've got averaging for the front end, now it's actually got both on that screen together. You can see that. So that's a real nice feature. So you can have both turned on. We can just turn the spectrum off and bingo. There's our average, and look at all that beautiful detail just popping out of the noise there. That's fantastic. You notice how it's like going up and down very slowly like that. I believe this is like beating between the averaging, because this has got two different types of averages. One is the FFT processing average, which we've got down here. The other, if we go to the acquisition menu, I've actually got the input sampling in average mode. So if we change that back to sample mode, you'll notice that it's kind of like it's different now. But if we can do both, we can pull out extra detail. Now I've got 10 averages on both, and we just pull out the extra detail there. It's very nice. The other thing I really like about this scope, not only the FFT detail we're getting in here, but look, I can just draw stuff. Look at that. Like just little things, like just popping out of the noise, like that one in there, for example, like this little thing popping out in there. It's absolutely terrific. Smiley face. There you go. But of course, that's a much more expensive scope than the other bottom of the range ones we've looked at. But you can see that, you know, while the performance of this is brilliant because it's got a 10-bit analog to digital converter, a true 1 millivolt noise floor, and really super fast FFT processing with a large number of points, we're really extracting the detail out of that. Actually, more, you could argue more so than we were getting with the Rigol spectrum analyzer over here. But granted, this scope is actually much more expensive than this Rigol spectrum analyzer, which is a bottom of the range thing, granted. Dave Cat. So there you go. These are, you know, a reasonably low-end scope, a low bandwidth one, can give a reasonable account of itself and can be fairly useful for troubleshooting boards like this. We can just go over there. We can see various peaks. You can see that they vanish. You can manufacture different size probes to get different sensitivities. You can really do live probing with just your scope. Works a treat. No worries. But you've got to have a nice fast FFT mode, and if it's slow as a wet week and it's got a crap resolution like the Rigol one, for example, you might be able to press it into doing the business, but it's not as nice as a high number of points FFT and, you know, real-time updating. So, and it works a treat. You don't need $1,000 or $1,500 spectrum analyzer, but as I said, I've ordered one of those SDR USB dongle things, and in theory you should be able to use this with a SDR dongle for a poor man's spectrum analyzer. But anyway, save that for another video. If you like this one, please give it a big thumbs up. As always, discuss down below. Catch you next time.